God says, I want to bless you. But blessing doesn't come without obedience. You're not going to be naturally generous until you understand that everything you have isn't really yours in the first place, and all you're doing is redistributing. Obedience and understanding leads to generosity. It's why I picked the passage this morning from Malachi. We've read it before. We're going to read it again. Today we're going to take a little bit of a different turn with it. Malachi 3, starting in verse 6. I, the Lord, do not change. Right there in the Bible. Not a different God in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's the same God. What God expects of us in the Old Testament, God expects of us in the New Testament. Difference is that He sent us Jesus to make up the difference that we can't make up for ourselves. I, the Lord, do not change, so you, O descendants of Jacob, are not destroyed. Ever since the time of your forefathers, you've turned away from my decrees, and you've not kept them. If you want to only understand that as the Ten Commandments, put yourself into the verse. How have you been doing keeping the Ten Commandments? We all stink. Ever since the time of your forefathers, you've turned away from my decrees, and you've not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord Almighty. Not only is this individual, but this takes on quite a note when you take it to the national level. But you ask, how are we to return? Will a man rob God, yet you rob me? But you ask, how do we rob you? God's telling us that we rob Him. We say, how do we rob you? He says, in tithes and offerings. You're under a curse, the whole nation of you, because you're robbing me, bringing the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty. How do we rob God? How do we keep from getting the very best from God? Because we keep it to ourselves and we don't bring it back to God. What is a tithe? The tithe is the tenth. What God is asking is a tenth of all that He blesses you with. He says, test me in this, and what He means is, if